Dr. Ethan Carter was not a man of outlandish dreams, nor was he prone to flights of fancy. He had spent years cultivating his expertise in botany, traveling from one remote corner of the world to another, meticulously cataloging species of flora that few had ever seen. His weathered notebooks, filled with sketches of leaves, petals, and seeds, bore testimony to countless hours spent in damp undergrowth or perched precariously on mountain ledges. He sought knowledge with a passion that had begun in childhood, when he would roam the woods near his home, convinced he heard the whispers of wildflowers under every stone. A summons had arrived at his small London flat on a crisp autumn morning, its contents requesting his expertise for an expedition to the Congo. The letter, bearing the official insignia of a private foundation dedicated to the preservation of endangered plant species, hinted at the discovery of a flower rumored to thrive only in one particular region, deep within labyrinthine swamplands. This flower, known in local legends as the Shimmering Heart, was said to glow faintly in moonlight, its petals a gentle lavender with veins of silver. If found, its medicinal potential might rival anything known to modern science. Determined, Ethan accepted with neither hesitation nor doubt. Within a fortnight, he stood at the edge of a winding river in the Congo, disembarking from a battered, creaking canoe. Birds of vibrant plumage darted overhead, their cries echoing through the thick canopy of leaves. He felt the oppressive heat coil around him, and a fine sheen of sweat crowned his brow. A local guide, named Campbell, greeted him with quiet warmth. Campbell would lead him to the rumored territory of the Shimmering Heart. They ventured through tangles of roots and vines, forging paths with sharp machetes. Each day brought fresh discoveries of curious flora, from creeping pitcher plants that emitted a sweetly pungent odor to ferns that dripped with milky sap. Yet, the Shimmering Heart proved elusive. Despite nights of thorough searching by lamplight, they found no trace of lavender petals or silver-laced veins. The jungle seemed intent on concealing its secrets, as though testing Ethan's resolve. One afternoon, while crossing a particularly dense region filled with colossal fig trees, the forest erupted in a sudden hush. Gone were the birds, the insects, the chatter of monkeys from high above. An eerie calm settled. It was as if the living tapestry of green around them held its breath. Campbell's dark eyes scanned the shadows, his lips pressed tight in alarm. Ethan sensed a strange energy coursing through the air, a subtle vibrational hum that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. They pressed on, forging deeper into the unknown. The canopy thickened overhead, transforming daylight into a permanent twilight. Moss-laden logs and tangled vines slowed them to a crawl. By the time dusk enveloped the jungle, they found a small clearing by a sluggish creek, ideal for setting up camp. Campbell lit a fire. The flames danced upon the leaves, casting flickering silhouettes against ancient trunks. The crackling embers matched the gentle drumming of Ethan's heart, filled with both excitement and trepidation. As the night stretched on, Ethan remained wide awake, his mind drifting with thoughts of the elusive flower. He wondered if it was all just myth. Yet, something intangible, a presence beyond the realm of normal comprehension, lurked in his senses. The hush of the forest, the slight shift in the wind, seemed to hint at a mystery waiting to be revealed. And though he did not know it then, his life was about to spin wildly off the course of earthly reason. On the 5th day of their search, Ethan and Campbell broke away from the main trail in search of a rumored vantage point. Local hunters had spoken of a plateau that overlooked the forest canopy, and Ethan hoped to spot any luminescent glimmer from above. Their climb was slow, the vegetation thick. Vines wove like serpents, draping from high boughs. Twice they heard the distant roar of a leopard, though the creature remained unseen. As they neared a jagged rock face, a flash of something bright caught Ethan's eye. He froze, straining to see through the labyrinth of leaves. There, lying crumpled upon the ground, was a figure. At first, he thought it might be a wounded animal, given the faint glow that seemed to emanate from it. Approaching with caution, he realized it was no creature of this earth. It was a woman, her skin a pale, luminescent blue. She was curled against a mossy log, her breathing ragged, her form trembling in apparent distress. Ethan's heart lurched. He crept forward, beckoning for Campbell to stay calm. Closer inspection revealed that her hair, long and fine, shifted colors with each shallow breath, from deep emerald to shimmering silver. Tiny speckles of light glistened along her forehead, reminiscent of stars on a midnight sky. She was garbed in a ripped, metallic tunic that clung to her willowy frame, and though her features were undeniably alien, they bore a graceful elegance. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that shone with a strange radiance. She tried to speak, but the sound emerged as a series of chimes and airy whispers. She looked terrified, starving, and lost. Ethan's instincts, honed by years of field medicine, kicked in. Regardless of her unearthly appearance, she was clearly in dire need of help. He knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on what appeared to be a burn wound near her ribs. The flesh was scorched, riddled with blackened edges that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly glow. Campbell, though visibly shaken, knelt to assist. Together, they fashioned a makeshift stretcher from sturdy branches and large palm leaves. The alien woman offered no resistance, too weak to protest. Her eyes, though wide with pain, held a flicker of relief. So gentle was their handling that she managed a small nod of thanks, or so Ethan surmised. Whether by telepathy or some innate empathy, he felt her gratitude resonate through his being. A wave of compassion overtook him. They carried her to a sheltered pocket beneath a rocky overhang, away from prying eyes. There, Ethan retrieved his medical kit. His supplies were limited: gauze, antiseptics, basic instruments, but he set about cleaning the wound. To his astonishment, her blood, a pale turquoise fluid, clung to his fingers. He bandaged her carefully, conscious of her delicate skin, luminous and soft. When the procedure ended, she closed her eyes, releasing a trembling sigh, as though suspended between relief and fear. Night fell swiftly, enveloping the jungle in thick darkness. The moon was obscured by clouds, offering only faint illumination. Campbell built a fire, and in its glow, the alien woman's features took on an otherworldly radiance that was haunting and beautiful. She shifted slightly, her breathing shallow, yet steadier than before. Occasionally, her eyes would flutter open, scanning Ethan's face, as if trying to grasp this new reality in which she found herself. In that flickering firelight, an unspoken bond began to form, a silent promise that he would not abandon her to the dangers of an unfamiliar world. Throughout the night, Ethan remained by her side, offering water in small sips from a canteen. She swallowed it gratefully, though a small trickle ran down her chin. She watched him with wide-eyed curiosity, almost childlike, as if she were relearning how to survive. He sensed her desperation, her vulnerability, and it ignited a fierce determination within him to protect her. He knew, even then, that their fates were entwined, bound together by circumstance and necessity in a place far from civilization. Morning arrived with a soft chorus of birds and the rustling of small forest creatures. Golden sunlight broke through gaps in the canopy, illuminating motes of dust and pollen that danced on the breeze. The alien woman stirred, turning her head slowly to take in the surroundings. Her color-shifting hair caught the morning light, glowing a gentle pink, like dawn incarnate. Ethan, who had dozed off fitfully, awakened at her movement. Campbell was already up, scanning the perimeter. "Good morning," Ethan said quietly, though he knew the words might mean nothing to her. He offered a faint smile, gesturing to the water canteen. She inclined her head, a halting nod that signaled understanding. Her eyes flickered, silver one moment, pale green the next, before she made an attempt at speech. What escaped her lips was a mix of delicate chimes and soft humming. Ethan shook his head gently, placing a hand on his chest. "My name is Ethan," he said, enunciating slowly, "Ethan." He repeated this, tapping his chest. Then he motioned to Campbell, who inclined his head in greeting and murmured his own name. Finally, Ethan gestured to the alien woman, hoping she would understand his inquiry. She cocked her head, a trace of confusion clouding her gaze. After a moment, she drew a trembling breath, touching her own chest with a slender, glowing fingertip. "Aelara," she managed, the syllables broken, but intelligible. Her voice was soft, melodious, echoing in the hush of the forest. Ethan's relief was palpable. "Aelara," he repeated carefully. She nodded, her lips curving into the faintest hint of a smile. It was a name neither earthly nor entirely alien to the ear, bearing a musical quality that lingered in the mind. He wondered what language it derived from, what star it might represent. Yet for the moment, it was enough that they had found a means to identify her. Throughout the morning, they communicated through gestures and expressions. Ethan offered her small pieces of fruit from the forest, cautious not to overstress her weakened system. She consumed them with obvious gratitude, though her face occasionally contorted in a momentary grimace at the strange, unfamiliar flavors. Each bite seemed to restore a fragment of her strength. By midday, she could sit upright, leaning against a rock with eyes closed, focusing on the warmth of the sun on her face. Ethan took the opportunity to examine the site where they had found her, searching for clues about her origins. He found scorch marks on several tree trunks, deep indentations in the soft earth, and fragments of what looked like twisted metal, though it was lighter than any known alloy. In one crater-like depression, he discovered a faint black residue that crackled with energy when he touched it with a metal instrument. It defied immediate explanation, making him suspect advanced technology at work. Campbell, quietly observing, suggested they move to a more secure location. The open forest floor offered little protection should there be any threats, natural or otherwise. They needed shelter, not just from wildlife, but from whatever might have caused those scorches. He voiced a rumor of a hidden cave behind a nearby waterfall, a place he had passed once in his youth. Ethan agreed. Aelara nodded when he gestured their plan, though concern flitted across her features, as though she dreaded venturing further. They constructed a makeshift stretcher once more, though Aelara seemed more stable, able to walk short distances with support. Her wound still pained her, oozing the occasional trickle of turquoise blood, but with Ethan's diligent care, it had ceased to glow with angry energy. A strange sense of trust now flowed between the three. The alien woman no longer flinched at their touch or cowered at their voices. Instead, she moved with them, adjusting to their pace, her gaze perpetually scanning the surroundings as though fearful of unseen pursuers. As dusk crept upon them again, the faint roar of falling water grew stronger. They followed the sound until they reached a cascade that tumbled from a high cliff. The sunlight's final rays glimmered off the mist, creating fleeting rainbows. Campbell pointed to a natural ledge behind the torrent, indicating a dark crevice that led into the cliff face. It was a modest space, large enough for a small camp. Carefully, they guided Aelara inside. It was a secret refuge, cool and dim, the roar of water echoing outside like a protective barrier. Moss clung to the walls, and shallow pools formed by dripping water dotted the floor. Aelara lowered herself onto a flat rock, exhaustion etched into her features. In the waning light, Ethan caught the faintest glow emanating from her skin. He perceived it as a barometer of her well-being, stronger light, more vitality, and vice versa. He had so many questions. Where had she come from? How did she crash here? Or was she chased? What unimaginable technology lay behind her appearance? Yet the gentle hush in her eyes told him she was too weak for interrogation. Instead, he busied himself gathering firewood with Campbell, building a modest flame near the entrance. As the sound of cascading water filled the darkness, Ethan watched Aelara's eyes drift shut. He took first watch that night, determined to ensure no harm would come to their fragile guest. If only he knew how profoundly this chance encounter would alter not just his life, but the destiny of two worlds. Days slipped into a rhythm within the hidden cave. Each morning, Campbell ventured out to hunt small game or gather fruit, while Ethan tended to Aelara's wound. As she healed, she began to communicate more, albeit in a halting, melodious language interspersed with the occasional word of English she gleaned from Ethan's patient lessons. She was like a child discovering a new tongue, though the quickness of her adaptation revealed a superior intellect. Aelara's fascination with Earth's flora was evident. When Ethan showed her the local plants he had collected, her luminous eyes would widen, and she would trace her slender fingers over leaves and petals. In return, she demonstrated unusual powers, as if her very touch encouraged the plants to flourish. Ethan watched, enraptured, as wilted vines seemed to straighten beneath her fingertips. She radiated an energy that reached deep into living organisms, a gift both astonishing and mysterious. Amid these moments of wonder, a growing tension gnawed at the edges of their sanctuary. At night, Ethan found himself haunted by fleeting glimpses of lights in the distant sky, moving in erratic patterns that did not match any known aircraft. The forest, once vibrant with animal calls, seemed subdued, as though holding its breath against a looming threat. Aelara grew uneasy, her color-shifting hair often settling into muted grays and whites, which Ethan interpreted as signs of fear. One evening, while Aelara dozed near the fire, Ethan stepped outside the cave to reflect. The moon was high, bathing the waterfall in silver. The hush of the night swallowed his footsteps. Standing at the edge of the water, he couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. Raising his eyes to the sky, he noticed fleeting flashes, like distant stars flickering. A sharp chill spread through him, more than the night air should have caused. How long can we remain hidden? He wondered aloud. The notion of an intergalactic hunt, hinted at by Aelara in her fractured English, sent waves of dread through him. She had mimed being chased, shot at, her ship forced down. Her injury bore the evidence of advanced weaponry. Whatever, or whoever, pursued her might return. With a heavy sigh, he returned to the cave, determined to feign optimism. Aelara aroused, her gaze immediately seeking his face. "Safe?" she inquired, her voice trembling, the single English word loaded with concern. "For now," Ethan assured, mustering a reassuring smile. "We are safe for now." He gently tucked a stray lock of shimmering hair behind her ear. Her skin glowed faintly, a testament to the tenuous hope she clung to. That night, as the fire's embers died, Ethan's dreams were plagued by images of fiery skies and monstrous silhouettes descending through the jungle. The illusions were too vivid, too real, stirring him awake in a cold sweat. The following morning, Campbell reported that he had spotted strange footprints in the mud near a clearing. They were large, triangular in shape, as if made by a heavy, three-toed creature. He also found a small disc of metal embedded in a tree trunk, humming with a faint vibration. Fear etched across his face as he described how it pulsated with unnatural energy. Aelara listened to Campbell's account, her own eyes widening. She spoke hurriedly in her own language, the quicksilver shift of her hair betraying rising panic. Then, with difficulty, she turned to Ethan, forming simple words. "They come soon." Ethan swallowed hard. "You're certain?" She nodded, placing a trembling hand over her heart, then reaching out to him. "No, safe, must go." Her voice, laced with urgency, sent a spike of adrenaline through him. Their hidden cave, safe as it seemed, was a static location. If the unknown pursuers closed in, they would be trapped. Yet the alternative, venturing into the depths of the Congo with a wounded alien, was perilous in its own right. Tropical storms, dangerous wildlife, and the labyrinthine nature of the jungle posed deadly risks. But the dread of something far worse overshadowed those earthly hazards. The hunt was closing in, and time was running short. As they debated strategies, Aelara's trembling fingers brushed against Ethan's, a silent plea for courage. He squeezed her hand, heart pounding. He had to protect her, and that resolve flared within him like a beacon in the darkness. For all his knowledge of plants and earthly life, he knew little of cosmic hunters, advanced weaponry, or interstellar refuges. Yet the bond formed between them urged him onward. He would stand by her side, come what may. In the days that followed, they prepared to abandon the cave. Campbell fashioned sturdy walking sticks and wove baskets for carrying provisions. Ethan meticulously mapped out routes he hoped would bypass dangerous territory, using topographic sketches from his old notebooks. Aelara, though still recovering, insisted on walking to strengthen her legs. Each evening, the three of them went through a solemn ritual, gathering their meager supplies, double-checking each item. Despite the fear, a sense of closeness developed. They ate together, shared stories in broken tongues, and found fleeting moments of laughter. Aelara found wonder in every leaf and creature they encountered near the waterfall. Ethan found wonder in her very existence. He marveled at the softness in her gaze, the resilience in her spirit, and the quiet harmony that seemed to emanate from her when she rested. It was in one such moment, as the last rays of the sun painted the sky in crimson hues, that Ethan realized something deeper was at play. Their energies, human and alien, were aligning. He felt a gentle warmth in his chest, a resonance that guided him toward a destiny he never could have imagined. If the hunt was indeed coming, he silently vowed to meet it with everything he had. And so, under the waterfall's roar, they made their final preparations to venture deeper into the Congo rainforest, hoping to outpace whatever menace lurked among the stars. At dawn, they emerged from behind the cascading water, each carrying a modest pack of supplies. Campbell led the way, forging a path through the thick undergrowth, his machete slicing methodically at stubborn vines. Aelara walked beside Ethan, her steps tentative but growing more confident with each passing hour. Although her skin's luminosity remained subdued, a faint glow trailed in her wake, like moonlight captured in fleeting dust. For the first 2 days of travel, they encountered no signs of pursuit. The forest was silent but for the occasional bird call, and the constant drone of insects lulled them into a tenuous sense of normalcy. By the third night, they reached a broad river, its waters winding lazily through ancient gnarled trees. There, they set up a humble camp, determined to regain their strength. As darkness fell, the moon revealed itself in full glory, turning the river's surface into a ribbon of silver. Ethan and Aelara sat on a large, flat stone, their feet dangling near the cool water. In the moonlight, her features took on a gentle radiance, and for the first time, Ethan noticed a pattern of faint symbols etched along her collarbone, glowing softly as if in response to the lunar light. She caught him gazing and offered a shy smile. "Meaning?" he asked, motioning gently toward the glowing symbols. She inclined her head, understanding. Her voice emerged as a soft whisper, a musical cadence woven through the night air. Though her vocabulary in English was limited, she pressed her hand to her chest, as if indicating her identity, her lineage, or perhaps a story written into her skin. He closed his eyes, letting her presence fill his senses, trying to piece together the significance of these markings. A soft vibration ran through him, a tender hum that seemed to resonate from within. When he opened his eyes, he found her studying him intently, her expression curious, as though she, too, sensed this wordless thread binding them. Gently, she took his hand and placed it against her collarbone, letting his fingers brush the luminescent symbols. A subtle tremor passed between them, and in that instant, he felt a surge of warmth, an unmistakable connection that transcended language. Aelara withdrew her hand, her cheeks flushed a pale lavender hue. She spoke a few words, her voice halting. "We one bond energy." She touched her forehead, then his, eyes shining with earnestness. "We close now." Though the meaning was not entirely clear, Ethan felt the truth of her statement in his very bones. Something extraordinary had begun the moment he tended to her wounds, something that grew each time they exchanged a gentle touch or locked eyes. He was no mystic, no practitioner of telepathy, yet he could not deny the tingling sense of awareness that was blossoming in his consciousness. Lost in this strange communion, they nearly failed to notice Campbell's approach. He cleared his throat softly, casting a sympathetic glance. "We must rest," he said. "Tomorrow, we cross the river. The next region is full of danger." He pointed to a swirling pattern in the mud where a giant crocodile had slid into the water. Ethan nodded, rising to his feet. He helped Aelara stand, her breath catching momentarily as she winced at the lingering pain in her side. With each passing day, her wound improved, yet it was far from healed. He guided her back to the small tent they had erected near a cluster of ferns. She offered him a gentle smile, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder in gratitude, a silent promise that echoed in her luminous gaze. That night, Ethan dreamed of starlit skies stretching into infinity. He was floating in a vast cosmos, tethered only by a glowing thread that connected him to Aelara. Celestial shapes drifted around them, each pulsing with life. A sense of calm enveloped him, and in that cosmic expanse, he felt a profound peace. But then, a violent rift tore the sky, a terrifying presence spilled through, and the tranquil vision collapsed. He awoke in a panic, soaked in sweat, heart hammering against his ribs. The forest outside remained silent, the moon having dipped below the horizon. A faint glow on the eastern sky heralded dawn's approach. Ethan took a calming breath, stepping outside to clear his thoughts. The symphony of insects played softly, as though trying to soothe his racing mind. He found himself praying to forces unknown, hoping they might spare this fragile bond. Little did he know, his prayers echoed Aelara's silent pleas. The next day, as they forded the wide river, the sense of looming danger grew impossible to ignore. Campbell's normally calm demeanor gave way to stern vigilance. Aelara's hair shifted to a pale silver sheen, a color Ethan had come to associate with anxiety. Clouds gathered overhead, promising rain. Thunder rumbled on the horizon, a deep rolling sound that melded with the roar of the current. They navigated carefully, holding onto ropes strung between partially submerged rocks, inching their way across. Mid-river, the sky darkened, and fat droplets began to fall, sending ripples across the water's surface. By the time they reached the opposite bank, a torrential downpour had descended, drenching them to the bone. The forest canopy offered little reprieve, its wide leaves funneling water into rivulets that drenched their supplies. They pressed on, determined not to lose precious time. The storm raged overhead, lightning cracking in brilliant forks, thunder reverberating so loudly that it set the very air trembling. Aelara stumbled once, her weakened leg giving way in the muddy terrain. Ethan caught her, guiding her to a cluster of thick banyan trees for shelter. They huddled there, water streaming down their faces, their breath coming in ragged gasps. For a moment, it seemed the world was ending in the deluge. Then, in a flash of white lightning, Ethan saw something that made his heart seize, a shape cutting through the sky at unnatural speed, a luminous craft hidden in the roiling clouds. The next flash of lightning revealed it again, closer, sleek and predatory. A buzzing in his ears intensified, drowning out the storm's clamor, as though his very brain resonated with the craft's energy. Aelara's reaction was immediate. She tensed, her face etched with terror, and her hair darkened to a deep, smoky hue. Campbell scrambled to Ethan's side, eyes wide. "They are here," he whispered, his voice trembling. "They seek her." A sudden surge of defiance welled in Ethan. He placed a reassuring hand on Aelara's shoulder. "We won't let them take you." She nodded, her eyes glistening with tears of fear and gratitude, the luminous patterns on her collarbone shimmering faintly even in the midst of the storm. They waited out the worst of the downpour beneath the banyan trees, hearts pounding at every lightning flash, dreading the next glimpse of that unearthly craft. When the storm finally abated, leaving the forest dripping and hushed, the sky remained gray and foreboding. Only the distant rumble of thunder lingered, a fading memory of the tempest that had swept over them. Quietly, they continued their journey, forging deeper into the forest. The terrain shifted to swampland, with pools of stagnant water brimming with reeds and hidden depths. The canopy thinned in places, exposing swathes of sky. More than once, Ethan thought he heard a whirring overhead, but each time he glanced up, he saw nothing but swirling clouds. A growing dread settled upon them, pushing them to move faster despite fatigue. By nightfall, they reached a patch of slightly elevated ground, riddled with thick mangrove roots. It was not ideal, but it was the best camp they could manage. Exhausted, they set out their soggy blankets and rationed what little food remained. Aelara's wound wept fresh turquoise fluid, prompting Ethan to clean and rebandage it, though his medical supplies were perilously low. As darkness closed in, the forest fell eerily silent. No insect hum, no croaking frogs. Even the branches overhead seemed to hold their breath. A sense of waiting, of dread, seeped into the marrow of their bones. Campbell kept watch first, scanning the sky and surrounding marshes with a practiced eye, spear in hand. Ethan drifted into an uneasy sleep, plagued by visions of that hunting craft. He saw monstrous silhouettes, tall beings with elongated limbs and shimmering armor, driving Aelara into a corner. He tried to scream, to leap forward and defend her, but found himself paralyzed. When he finally jerked awake, heart hammering, he realized it was nearly dawn, the sky streaked with pale light. Campbell stood rigidly at the edge of their makeshift camp, eyes locked on something beyond. Ethan followed his gaze and felt his blood run cold. Circling high above the treetops was a faint light, silent yet unmistakable, patrolling the air in slow, deliberate sweeps. The hunt had begun, and it was only a matter of time before the hunters descended to the swamp floor. An urgent whisper escaped Ethan's lips. "We must move." Aelara nodded, reading the fear etched across his face. She stood, leaning on him as they broke camp hurriedly, leaving no trace behind. With Campbell leading, they delved further into the swamp, hoping to stay one step ahead of the unearthly pursuers. Over the next days, a desperate game of cat and mouse unfolded. The hunters rarely showed themselves openly, but ominous signs were everywhere. Trees scarred by weaponry, scorched patches of ground, the distant hum of advanced engines. More than once, Ethan and Campbell spotted eerie silhouettes moving through the trees at impossible speeds, leaving swirling motes of purple light in their wake. Aelara grew weaker, haunted by nightmares and the knowledge that her people's aggressors had tracked her across the cosmos. Yet something else began to stir within her, a slow-burning vitality that contradicted her exhaustion. She woke one morning with a strange glow radiating from her abdomen, faint but discernible beneath her tattered tunic. Alarmed, Ethan examined her closely. Though she winced at his touch, a subtle warmth coursed through her flesh, unlike any fever he had encountered. Days turned into weeks as they trekked through the heart of the Congo rainforest, forging new paths in an effort to evade detection. Despite the constant fear, Ethan noticed changes in Aelara. Her cheeks took on a healthier sheen, and her eyes shone with renewed vigor. At times, she pressed his hand to her abdomen, as if wanting him to feel some hidden presence. He didn't fully grasp what it meant until one evening. As they rested beside a giant kapok tree, she took his face between her slender hands and uttered the words that changed everything. "Child inside." Her voice trembled with both wonder and trepidation. She gazed deep into Ethan's eyes, the luminescent patterns on her collarbone pulsating in rhythmic waves. "Yours, ours." A jolt of astonishment shot through him. The notion seemed impossible. They were of different species, different worlds. Yet, in a strange corner of his heart, he recognized the bond that had been forming, that potent energy exchange, the resonance uniting them at a fundamental level. He let his hands gently rest on her abdomen, feeling the faint glow emanating from within. A mixture of awe, joy, and utter confusion spread through his mind. "How?" he began, but words failed. A tear trickled down Aelara's cheek. She pressed her forehead to his, a gesture that had come to symbolize unity, acceptance. She murmured phrases in her alien language, weaving them with the few English words she had mastered, forming a tapestry of devotion that transcended logic. Campbell watched from a respectful distance, recognizing the profound nature of the moment. Though he likely did not grasp every detail, he could see the fragile miracle taking shape. In hushed tones, Ethan explained what Aelara had told him. The Congolese guide, who had witnessed countless wonders in the depths of the rainforest, nodded with solemn empathy. A new life, part human, part something beyond the stars, was quickening. That night, the hunters struck again, but this time, they drew too close, nearly catching their quarry by surprise. Ethan and Aelara were awakened by a shrill sound that cut through the forest's hush, a keen of alien energy. Campbell rushed to rouse them, and they fled, half-dressed, into the undergrowth. Pulses of violet light cut through the darkness, charring trees where they struck. Branches cracked and fell, igniting small fires that hissed and sputtered in the damp air. Somehow, the trio managed to escape. They ran until their lungs burned, crossing a stream where slippery rocks threatened to tumble them into the currents. By dawn, they collapsed in a small clearing dominated by giant ferns, panting and trembling. Aelara clung to Ethan, her newly revealed pregnancy adding a protective ferocity to his resolve. The hunters, it seemed, were growing more aggressive, more desperate to reclaim their prey. And so, with hearts pounding and nerves frayed, they pressed onward, pushing their bodies beyond all limits. The forest thickened once more, and they relied on Campbell's innate sense of direction to navigate. To Ethan's amazement, Aelara demonstrated resilience beyond that of a human. While pregnant and injured, she still managed to keep pace, as though the life growing inside her lent her hidden strength. Each evening, they found a hidden spot to camp, where Ethan would massage her legs and check her wound, whispering words of encouragement. With each passing day, the glow in her abdomen grew more pronounced, sometimes pulsing in synchrony with her heartbeat. It was as if the child within her had tapped into some cosmic energy, forging a fusion of DNA, or perhaps something more elusive, binding stardust and earth together. The deeper they ventured, the more secrets the jungle revealed. Massive strangler figs, hidden waterfalls, fleeting glimpses of rare wildlife that peered curiously at this strange band of travelers. In these quiet moments, Ethan and Aelara discovered small pockets of bliss, reminders that life could still flourish in the face of terror. A gentle caress of her cheek, a smile shared when tasting sweet berries, an embrace before drifting into uneasy sleep. They were precious islands of peace amid a roaring sea of conflict. In the end, it was not just about survival anymore. Aelara's unborn child had forever altered the stakes, the impetus for them to reach safety, to protect a nascent miracle that might one day be a bridge between two worlds. What had begun as a rescue mission had evolved into a quest for hope itself, a hope that no cosmic hunter, no swirling vortex of malevolence, could be permitted to extinguish. The Congo rainforest stretched endless before them, yet Campbell believed they were near a secure haven, a highland plateau where local stories spoke of hidden sanctuaries. According to lore, the plateau's dense mist concealed caves and ancient stone structures left by forgotten civilizations. If such a place existed, it might provide the stronghold they needed. On the 20th day since Aelara revealed her pregnancy, they reached the foothills of that rumored highland. The forest began a gradual incline, the air cooling slightly. Dense fog clung to the treetops, filtering sunlight into hazy beams that lent the scene an ethereal quality. Though exhaustion lay heavy on all of them, a spark of hope guided their steps. Yet, as they climbed, it became clear the hunters were closing in. The sightings of alien craft above the canopy grew more frequent, the hum of energy weapons more insistent. Any notion of outrunning them dissolved. At dusk, on a narrow ridge overlooking a deep valley, the final confrontation arrived. A piercing shriek echoed from the sky, forcing them to cover their ears. A beam of lavender light cut through the mist, striking a giant tree trunk, splintering wood with a deafening crack. 3 figures descended, their armor reflecting the ghostly glow of advanced technology. They stood tall, limbs elongated, faces obscured by sleek visors. Each bore a weapon that crackled with arcs of energy. Their stance was unmistakably predatory. Aelara shuddered, her hair turning a stark white, a sign of profound terror. She clutched Ethan's arm, eyes wide. Instinct roared within him. He would not let them take her, not after everything they had endured. Gathering his courage, he stood between Aelara and the hunters, arms spread wide in a futile attempt at shielding her. Campbell joined him, brandishing his spear, though he must have known it was no match for alien weaponry. For a moment, time froze. The hunters leveled their glowing weapons. A swirl of storm clouds overhead mirrored the tension below, thunder rumbling ominously. Then, Aelara stepped forward, determination blazing in her eyes. She touched the patterns on her collarbone, coaxing them into a bright surge of light. A pulse of energy radiated from her, rippling through the air. The alien hunters hesitated, as if taken aback by the sudden display. Summoning courage from the depths of her being, Aelara spoke a string of words in her native tongue, then turned to Ethan. "They want me," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "They see, child threat." Her gaze fell to her glowing abdomen, the life that defied cosmic separation. "No, child. No, unity," she managed to explain, her voice thick with sorrow and defiance. The lead hunter took a step forward, raising a weapon that hummed with lethal intent. Before he could fire, Aelara raised her hands, unleashing a burst of that unearthly energy. Tendrils of shimmering light snaked out, colliding with the alien's armor. Sparks danced along metallic plates, momentarily disorienting the attacker. Sensing the opening, Campbell let out a fierce cry, hurling his spear. It ricocheted off alien metal, but the distraction further disorganized the hunters. Ethan, seizing his chance, guided Aelara toward a rocky outcropping that promised some cover. Another alien aimed, firing a crackling beam that scorched the ground near them, missing by mere inches. The heat of it seared Ethan's face, forcing him to duck. A second pulse of energy erupted from Aelara, more focused this time. It struck one of the hunters in the visor, knocking him back. The alien stumbled, reeling as arcs of violet electricity danced around him. The other two advanced, weapons raised to strike. Ethan braced himself for the worst. But then, the sky itself seemed to convulse. Lightning forked in rapid succession, illuminating the ridge in blinding flashes. A thunderous roar followed, shaking the very ground. In that frenzied chaos, Aelara mustered one final surge of power. The patterns along her collarbone glowed so brightly that Ethan had to shield his eyes. A wave of energy, radiant and unstoppable, washed over the hunters, enveloping them in an incandescent aura. A keening cry rent the air as they struggled against the force. Their suits sparkled and sparked, then exploded in blinding bursts. In seconds, the aliens vanished, disintegrated or teleported away, leaving behind only the echo of their shrieks. When the light finally subsided, the ridge fell silent, save for the crackle of leaves set aflame by stray beams. Aelara collapsed, her strength spent. Ethan caught her, lowering her gently to the ground. She trembled violently, her breath ragged. But the threat was gone. The hunters repelled, at least for now. Tears blurred Ethan's vision as he cradled her. Campbell rushed to their side, placing a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. They had survived an encounter beyond human comprehension. Weak but alive, Aelara opened her eyes, offering a trembling smile. Her abdomen still glowed softly, a beacon of life enduring against all odds. With cautious hands, Ethan checked for injuries. Apart from exhaustion, she seemed stable. Relief flooded him. He helped her to her feet, Campbell lending support as well. A combination of adrenaline and sheer willpower fueled their final steps to the plateau. Eventually, they found a hidden crevice in the rocks, a hollow overlooked by thick vines. It provided a measure of safety from above, shielded from prying eyes. There they collapsed, hearts pounding, minds spinning with the enormity of what had transpired. In the days that followed, they took refuge on that mist-shrouded plateau. The land offered fresh water from hidden springs, edible plants, and roots to sustain them. Aelara's strength gradually returned, and with it, the child's glow became more serene, less volatile. For hours on end, Ethan sat with her, holding her hand, whispering assurances that they were safe, they were together, and they would welcome their child into a world that, for all its dangers, still held beauty and possibility. Campbell fashioned a lean-to shelter from fallen branches and broad leaves, ensuring they stayed dry under the frequent rains. Together, they built a small fire pit, venturing out only to gather essentials. The sky remained quiet, no sign of alien craft cutting through the clouds. Wordlessly, they all understood that the hunters had been dealt a blow, perhaps deterred by Aelara's raw power, perhaps regrouping far away. Then came the night when Aelara woke Ethan with a strangled cry. Pain seized her body in rippling waves. The child was coming. Fear and awe gripped Ethan. Despite his medical background, this was uncharted territory. But instinct guided him. He prepared blankets, boiled water, held Aelara's hand as she labored through the contractions. Campbell stood guard, spear in hand, scanning the skies. Sometime past midnight, as the moon bathed the plateau in silver, the child was born. Her cries rang out, high and clear, mingling with her mother's gasping sobs of relief. A girl, luminous with an otherworldly glow, yet with unmistakably human features. Her skin shimmered a gentle turquoise, faint patterns tracing across her tiny limbs. She breathed Earth's air with determined vigor, her cosmic heritage shining in her bright, inquisitive eyes. A surge of euphoria enveloped Ethan as he held her for the first time. Tears traced down his cheeks, and he bowed his head, pressing his lips to the baby's brow. Aelara wept softly, exhausted but radiant with joy. Campbell, trembling with reverence, offered a quiet prayer in his native tongue, welcoming this strange new life into the world. In that moment, all terror, all cosmic hunts, all star-driven fears seemed distant. They were simply four souls, man, woman, child, guide, bound together in a miracle that bridged two realms. The baby's cry was a note of hope echoing across the ancient stones, reminding them that even in the midst of darkness, new life could bloom. Over the following weeks, Aelara regained her health. The child, whom they named Aelara, grew strong, fed by her mother's nourishment and the energies of a rainforest that seemed to embrace her. Indeed, the local fauna seemed drawn to her presence, as if recognizing the purity of her origins. Monkeys approached their campsite, curious but unafraid. Birds perched nearby, singing in gentle trills. Even the wind itself carried a whisper of blessing. In time, Ethan knew they would have to return to civilization, or at least find a safer haven. But for now, they relished the solitude, the peace. A quiet understanding formed that Aelara might represent something larger than any of them could fathom. She was living proof of unity, of love that transcends species, forging an unbreakable bond between Earth and the stars. When at last they packed their meager belongings and began the cautious journey down from the plateau, Aelara gurgled happily in her mother's arms, her color-shifting hair already showing signs of the cosmic heritage that coursed in her veins. Each step forward felt like stepping into a new dawn. Whatever challenges awaited them beyond the jungle, Ethan and Aelara would face them together, as partners, lovers, and parents to a child who carried in her tiny heart the seeds of two worlds. Thus ended their time in the mist-shrouded stronghold, but the true voyage was only beginning. As they moved through the ancient trees, Campbell leading the way, Ethan found Aelara's hand in the semi-darkness, gave it a gentle squeeze, and felt her respond with a soft, glowing warmth. A new family, bound by fate, stood ready to bridge the distance between Earth's green cradle and the endless tapestry of cosmic night, forging a future filled with promise, love, and, at long last, a well-earned happy ending.